Trump's greatest accomplishment is the nihilism that he's engendered, and the fact that there's no objective truth and people don't know how to use their power in our society anymore, democratically or with their voice, because it's so corroded.
Sam Seder and Emma Vigeland talked with Krystal Ball, Crystals of Krystal Kyle and Friends, and of course Sam Seder and Emma Vigeland are of the Majority Report, and they did a live stream. This was yesterday. It's a long 3-hour video that you can find on the Majority Report channel. If you want to watch the whole thing, I'm just going to take a look at a smaller piece of it with you today. They talk about a wide variety of things, but right off the bat, this has only been this week. It's hard to believe it's been 1 week, but, stuff is crazy with the K. I'm going to have my thoughts that I will add as we go, and then I want to know what you think in the comments, but let's check it out.
Krystal, it's been, 4 days now, and 3 days. I don't know how you want to measure this, 3 or 4 days. It feels like it's been a month already. First thoughts on the new Trump administration.
I mean, I don't think this is a surprise to you guys, and it's certainly not a surprise to me, but he certainly confirmed in the first days that he's going to take the most maximalist, lawless approach that he possibly can. And I think a couple of the key indicators there are the blanket pardons, even of violent J6ers who assaulted police officers. Wildly unpopular. His own vice president was like, of course, violent ones should be in prison. So the fact that he did the blanket pardon with, a few commutations, I think that was an extraordinary marker. I think the executive order to, quote unquote, end birthright citizenship, which of course has already been tossed by a federal court. I think that's another marker of the maximalist approach. And then the third, you could pick many others besides, but the other one that has been just incredibly distressing and blackpilling to me was 2 days before inauguration, him launching his own shitcoin, making tens of billions of dollars off of his own supporters through just a brazen Ponzi pyramid scheme. And now exploring a digital asset reserve, which just means like using public resources and taxpayer funds to buy his own shitcoin, not to mention pump up the massive net worths of his, giant donors and oligarch friends. So yeah, there are no brakes on this car. Any of the previous minimal resistance that existed, whether from the opposition party, the Democrats, or from within his own party, people like the Jeff Flakes of the world. Obviously, the Supreme Court is very conservative now. But, he's been given blanket immunity as well. He doesn't have to face the voters again, most likely, we pray. So I don't know what is going to hold him back from doing whatever the hell he wants to do and whatever the hell Elon Musk and all the other Broligarchs want to do as well.
Before they respond to that, I just want to jump in here. I think that, sometimes with politics, something crazy happens and you think to yourself, why? What is going on here? In Trump's case, you don't have to think very hard, right? The motive is always self-interest. She outlined it with the meme coin, and federals is all about enriching his own pockets. And the only thing that stands in the way of that logic is your outrage. You go, but that's insane. Nobody would do that. Yeah, no, that's precisely what he's doing. That's precisely what he's doing. And the other piece of it, and she touched on the conservative Supreme Court, is that it's this shock and awe first week, right, of this flurry of executive orders, some closer to what legitimate is and some flagrantly anti-constitutional. And the truth of the matter is that a lot of this stuff, if it's a shotgun and the courts manage to block the really obvious ones like, birthright citizenship, a lot of other ones kind of go into effect until the slow wheels of the court system, which are by no means a guarantee with judges like Eileen Cannon on the bench, take longer to put a stop to. So in the meantime, things can start happening even if they end up being deemed rightfully illegal.
Which is good. I'm going to steal that one.
The Broligarchs?
Yeah.
I like that too.
I don't know who coined that, but it was not me. But I know, it's been floating around. I think it's a pretty good term.
Yeah.
We had Jacob Silverman on this week to I couldn't. It just was impossible for me to wrap my head around, like the whole meme coin thing. Like and I say this as someone who collected baseball cards, who collected coin, like every nerdy coins and all sorts of things that don't necessarily have an intrinsic more valuable than another, but like the meme coin thing is really impressive. You are really just packaging air and branding air. And
it's speculation for the sake of speculation, which feels like a way bigger section of our economy than is sustainable.
But
yeah,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, I think all of crypto is fake and a scam, but at least with Bitcoin, there was like, oh, it's a new technology and you can use it one thing you can use it for is like evading sanctions. Okay, that's an actual use that we can, wrap our hands around. Money laundering, okay.
Untraceable contracts on people if you want to have someone taken out.
There you go. At least it's a real world use, right? Yep. With these, there's not even a pretense. Like, it's just pure, brazen, upward transfer of wealth, extraction, fraud, and everyone's just like, yeah, this is fine, this is legal. It's insane to me. I genuinely, like, that's the thing that I think about, that I'm like, how does a society even recover from greenlighting this level of just mass sanctioned fraud by elites? How do you come back from that? Like, we are in such a late stage of capitalism that I can't even wrap my head around. So that one really threw me for a loop too, Sam.
Yeah, and I think the whole project really does seem to be, and I mean this in like sort of the broadest sense. And I don't think we've seen this, not in my lifetime anyways. Everything is geared towards extracting existing value that exists within our society. It is set to extract money from people, whether, maybe in return, some of these people get a sneaker worth, a fraction of what it was, but it's extracting money that way. It is essentially all of the the attacks on the administrative state is about extracting more from society in the form of more cancers, in the form of more food-borne illnesses, in the form of worker safety, whatever it is, and it all going to a sort of like increasingly narrow group of corporate benefactors, essentially. Like, all of this is just full-on extraction. Even his tariff stuff is really just going to be leveraged for it to get kickbacks. I mean, this is like a full-on. The mafia has moved into the neighborhood, and everybody's going to pay some form of protection money. And if the sporting goods shop needs a loan, we'll get a loan. But we're just going to be sucking stuff out of your company until it just dies.
The term that I like to use in conversations with friends is rip and run. This is a rip and run. And all of the executive orders and everything else is just a smokescreen. It's all like, look at the shiny thing, or look at the outrageous thing, or look at the Elon Musk Hitler salute, right? And argue about that. Well, we stuff our collective hands into your pockets and pull out your money as fast as we possibly can.
All a leverage buyout, it feels like.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. And, it's the levels of preposterousness, if that's a word, just boggle the mind, because at the same time you have this mass hardcore immigration crackdown, which is allegedly about, protecting people's jobs and making sure American workers are okay. At the same time, you're inviting Sam Altman and all these other AI tech barons to the White House to announce this big theoretical $500 billion Stargate project. Well, these guys can they accomplish this goal? I don't know. But they'll come out and tell you their plan is to eliminate all jobs, like to make all human labor useless. That is their plan, to completely transform all of society. Sam talks about rewriting the social contract. He also talks about how, there's a good chance that it's just going to destroy the world, but at least there'll be some good companies in the meantime. I mean, this is their words, not to mention the way that stuff is already being deployed in its current form. Is it, for the greater benefit of humanity? I'm not going to say there aren't any beneficial purposes. I use ChatGPT and now DeepSeek, actually, just like all the rest of them. But one of the primary ways it's been deployed was in the battlefield in Gaza to mass murder civilians.
Lavender, right?
That's right. And
yeah.
972 and DropSite got their hands on leaked documents that shows Microsoft, which is OpenAI, Sam Altman, that's their partner. Microsoft's biggest AI customer is the Israeli government. So this is what AI is being used for now, not to mention, algorithmically denying people healthcare, life-saving healthcare, not to mention Amazon using AI to fire people without a human even ever being involved or intervening whatsoever. So, of course, we know that this type of tech, when developed and leveraged by the capitalist class, is not going to be developed to benefit humanity. It's going to be developed to line their pockets, and their goal is to make most of humanity irrelevant.
Well, the other thing that she didn't mention that AI is currently being used for is weapon systems. And they're called, they're fully automatic weapon systems. They are capable of defining their own targets. So not a drone that a human pilot is piloting, but a swarm of drones that is controlled by AI and is deciding on its own targets, right? I mean, if that's not a precursor to James Cameron's Terminator, they are robots that choose their own targets. And you say, well, we'll give them parameters. And you go, right, but then you cut them loose and they interpret those parameters as they go. That's insane.
Right, and that piece about the labor piece of AI, it benefits these AI barons to say, oh, they're going to become greater than humans, and it's almost like a sci-fi movie. Now, the practically what it's going to be used for is to cut labor costs for some of these companies. And like when we're talking about how it's all about extraction at this certain point in late stage capitalism, it really is about how we outsourced our manufacturing starting in like really the 70s in this neoliberal era. And so much of our economy in the 90s and on was concentrated in Silicon Valley and with these tech barons who they're up against the ceiling of the practical use that they can provide for people, right? Like Facebook and Instagram exist as utility and they're not really getting many new signees would be my guess. It's kind of at a saturation point. So what do you do when a whole major section of the economy, probably like the biggest industry that's concentrated in this country, is a lot of just hot air? All they have, then now it's AI, but it's really just about maintaining their market position. And they have found the perfect president to do that because he's just as corrupt as they are. But it's unsustainable because of the compounding effect also of the income and wealth inequality. This is just going to make it even worse at a rapid pace.
Yeah. I mean, we have so many like genuine civilization level crises, I feel like, coming to a head right now. There's the crisis you're talking about of this, fake extraction built economy. There's the political crisis under that too, which is effectively neoliberalism was about getting rid of any values and outsourcing them to the market. So if the market likes it, if it's good for the market, that's what our values are. And that's what leads to this current dystopian economic system that we have. Obviously, there's the climate crisis, which is becoming, increasingly unbearable. We're already at a point where, they just announced last year, once again, hottest year on record. Now we've crossed that 1.5 degree Celsius threshold. So those disasters are only going to be picking up steam. That, of course, fuels additional demands in terms of migration, which causes, fuels this reactionary political climate. And then you do have these, this mass inequality that has rendered democracy just, it's a silly word at this point. I really have come to the place where I feel like democracy and capitalism, they were not able to coexist, certainly not in the system that we have where it's no holds barred in terms of all money in politics and very, very few effectively meaningless limits. So that's part of what's so distressing in this moment is all of these pieces coming together. I sort of go back and forth about which one I'm most alarmed at the present.
Yeah, I want to get to that as to how you're managing, like in the context of what we do, like sorting this stuff out on a daily basis, like which fire is actually the more pressing one or the more relevant one. You mentioned like the wealth disparity and the sort of like threats to democracy. Aside from, we just played a clip of Russell Vogt saying we may not distribute the funds that the IRA calls for, which is really pretty fundamentally anti-democratic. I mean, there's a law that you're not supposed to ignore, but the level, and I know that we've been throwing the word oligarchy around for a long time. I mean, and that Gillen's study, for 15 years, people have been talking about, like, when wealthy people's interests come before Congress and there's controversy, their desires win out. But the nakedness and the sort of specificity of the oligarch that we seem to have almost overnight, like, maybe over the course of the past 16 months, is incredible. I mean, when I'm having political conversation with people now, it's all about billionaires. Like it's not, what's the Speaker of the House doing? It's what's Musk doing versus Altman doing versus, Peter Thiel doing. Like, this is, it is a full-on naked thing. And the only difference is, and we keep saying this, is that, like, with Putin, he's got his cadre of oligarchs, except for one of them steps out of line, they end up having, stepping into an elevator shaft and there's no elevator there, or their planes seem to fall from the sky. I don't think Trump has that ability. Where does this, how does this end? Like,
well, the difference there is that Putin is in control, right? Putin isn't just a figurehead. Putin is the mob boss, is the Don. Donald Trump's just a clown. Donald Trump is just a meat shield they put out front to create crazy, and all they need to do to keep him under control is give him shiny toys, right? And let him feel like he's one of the billionaire club, but nobody thinks that he's a competent guy.
I mean, like, honestly, because, Democrats, maybe they'll get the message, maybe they won't, but they're like, well, we're going to forefront Mark Cuban and he'll come in. And Mark Cuban was taking that role in the Harris campaign. Whether he had it or not, it's unclear, but he was certainly saying out there, like, don't listen about the whole Lena Khan's gone.
In the rich. Lena Khan, she's not really going to do that stuff.
I mean, it's a problem.
Yeah, it's a problem. It is on a scale. Like, look, Democrats, I'm not letting them off the hook. They're complicit. They're the ones that also embraced this big money era, made it bipartisan, and made it very difficult for them to be able to criticize Trump's corruption, criticize the rise of this billionaire cadre in his midst. I mean, his first cabinet was the wealthiest cabinet in history, and this one dwarfs that by far, not to mention, the lineup on the dais behind him as he's giving his speech. Like, this is his administration. It is a level of control and brazenness that we've never seen. We have not seen before in American history. You could maybe go back to, like, the days of J.P. Morgan when the federal government was much smaller. Maybe there's an analogy there, but we've never seen this before. And Elon Musk specifically, not only is he the richest man on the planet, not only does he control a major communications network.
Yep.
Not only is he himself a public figure with a cult following, but he also is one of the largest federal government contractors, Pentagon contractors specifically, is in all kinds of legal and regulatory trouble with the government. I'm sure that's all, imminently going away, including alleged SEC violations, labor violations, and environmental violations. But now he's been given this whole of government mandate to do whatever he wants. And, I know when Doge was first announced, people were like, oh, this is just some make work project. I've never really bought that. Because to bring it back to Russ Vogt, who's, going to be once again at the Office of Management and Budget, which is this, like, sort of, nerdy budgeting agency, but actually very powerful and very important. He was, behind Project 2025, and they spent the 4 years when they were out of power figuring out how they could maximize their use of power when they were back in government. Now, that looks like, of course, installing cronies across all agencies who are willing to follow even unlawful and unconstitutional orders. But it also looks like things that like what you were referring to, Sam, which is saying, yes, Congress passed those funds, but we don't actually believe we have an obligation to spend them. We don't believe in, it's called, I think, the Impoundment Control Act of 1970 something. We don't believe that was constitutional. So that means even if you want to spend money on the Department of Education, Congress, we can cut it at will because we're under no obligation to do that. Oh, you may want to spend money on food stamps, but we don't want to. So, we're just going to unilaterally slash that. Those are the sorts of powers that they are looking at exercising. So this is another way in which this Trump administration is different from the first one. They are much more organized and they are much more focused on achieving radical, right-wing, libertarian, conservative goals in service of the oligarch cadre.
That's right. The 2025 guys aren't just lobbying him. They wrote the whole game plan, right? And they made a list of the best people for him to put in place. So Trump is not particularly interested in leading. That's work, right? He likes the praise and he likes to speechify and sign things and show that he signed a thing. I think we'll see missile parades if he decides he wants to do that, where he's in the back of a thing waving, right, with confetti. But this time around, he has a roadmap already lined up for him, and those are extremists.
And I'll just add to that, they have 270 more judges than they did at the beginning of their administration last time, including the 6-3 Supreme Court. So their ability, the things that slowed their roll the first time, like you guys did not do the 60-day, period or comment period, or you don't have the authority to do this. I mean, we've seen examples, particularly out of the Fifth Circuit, of judges just basically twisting themselves into pretzels because they know, they're now part of this sort of like a feudal system. The way that they will rise up and go from, duke to prince or whatever it was back in the day is that they will, start pumping out these decisions that will not inhibit the administration. And
they're auditioning for Trump.
Totally. Yeah. And so there are just less institutional breaks and also even political ones, because when Musk out there, and Musk and Trump are going to have their arguments, but they're never going to break up because their incentives are just too well aligned.
That's what I think.
This whole thing that Musk is going to tire, or Trump is going to tire of Musk and get rid of him. I think that's honestly that's JV
that's 2016
Trump. Yeah,
resistance.
Honestly, this time around, because Musk can literally deploy sums of money in these Senate or congressional races and maintain a discipline that we just have never seen in American politics.
It's why Joni Ernst is voting for Hegseth, right?
That's
because
right.
she's up in 2026
That's
and she's
right.
terrified of Musk.
And
he doesn't even have to spend the money. Just the threat of the money
just
was
the threat of it.
Right.
Very credible. He literally spent $250 million electing Trump. You think?
And I think that's actually
millions to take
I
you
think
out?
that's a minimum. I think he probably spent more. We just don't know about it. But that's the $250 million that we know of. And there's also, Harris had her cadre of billionaires and millionaires, but there was a bunch of them. There were 3 people who provided Trump with something like $500 million of his billion that was spent. That's pretty concentrated. That's literally like a casual sort of intimate dinner that you can have with these people.
That's exactly right.
And all Miriam Adelson says is like the West Bank.
Right. And I guess, you talked a little bit about this, Krystal, but I'm wondering if you could expand on just The fact that Musk owns this major communications platform and Zuckerberg now with his broccoli haircut on the frickin' Joe Rogan Experience, acting like he's a TikToker, they're all genuflecting. They all, I mean, this TikTok ban, if it goes through or if it's sold to somebody that Zuckerberg can work with, Instagram, that's their biggest competitor. Like, there's a lot on the line. And of course, the antitrust lawsuit about their purchase of Instagram and WhatsApp. But the whole salute thing, it's not the number one story in the end. But I do feel like the reaction has been indicative of the immense challenges that we face in this corroded communications environment. This billionaire owns this tech platform, and he scared a lot of outlets out of even talking about the fact that he appeared to allegedly do a Sig Heil at the inauguration.
Dude, he did what he did. He did what he did. You can say he's throwing his heart, or you can say he's Sig Heiling. That's the gesture. And we all saw it with our own eyes. And then he pivoted to the other side and he did it again. You can argue that makes him a closet Nazi. You can say that he's just a provocateur that loves to rile up the base. You can say that he's Asperger's and he doesn't think that way and he doesn't understand what he's doing. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. He's the richest man on the planet. He got up in front of an audience to celebrate a win, and he threw a couple of gestures that, whatever the intention, are best known as the Nazi salute. And so people they argue about the intention, but you don't argue about the intention. You look at the impact, right? The rock hits the water and the water responds with a series of ripples. That's the actionable conversation, not what the person meant when they threw the rock. It doesn't matter. The rock hit the water and here we are with the ripples, right?
And it doesn't really even matter what the truth is, right? His heart goes out to you.
That's
yes.
it, exactly.
It doesn't matter what the truth is to an extent, because his fans and that alt-right, like almost Gamergate 4chan community that Bannon empowered and saw as the vision for Trump's base, and it's played out. It's what's happened. They're all they're post-truth people. They're postmodernists that believe that you just make your truth by speaking it, and there's no objective truth.
That's
and
right.
I feel like because our politics are so captured by big money, because people feel like their voice is not heard democratically, and I include Biden in that, by not stepping aside for a primary, that made people's voices feel like they weren't heard, and he didn't hear them on Gaza either. I feel like Trump's greatest accomplishment is the nihilism that he's engendered, and the fact that there's no objective truth and people don't know how to use their power in our society anymore, democratically or with their voice, because it's so corroded.
And that means that all the old sort of standard values of sorry, the dog is demanding attention.
That's okay.
All the old standard values of humility or shame or empathy or mercy, in the words of the bishop who they were so angry dared to preach this very basic Christian message of Christian tolerance. All those virtues are kind of out the window.
Boy, that's such a great point. This is a terrific conversation. It goes on for another couple of hours, and I may do more videos on it. I'm going to end it for here now, just in the interest of keeping these things of a manageable length. But I agree with all of the points they're making, and I would really be interested to hear what you think. Please let me know in the comments.